I did a video last week or week and a half ago about how Quillette published a story that argued essentially the intellectual dark web and in its periphery people like me are the new reactionary right. And that's absolutely not true. And I refuse to cede the left to a fringe regressive religion that has nothing to do with what the left is. And what ends up happening, this piece from Quillette, if you're not familiar, Quillette is considered a publication of like the intellectual dark web. It's academic articles, arguments. It's good. It's good. I think Claire Lehman's great. She's the founder, I believe, founding editor of Quillette. So essentially what keeps happening, and I made a video about this. I made 2 videos. People want to smear Dave Rubin. And what they end up doing is smearing literally anyone who is a regular mainstream liberal who opposes the fringe orthodoxy of a religion. Intersectional feminism, regressive left, identitarianism, whatever you want to call it, it's a fringe religion and it doesn't define what the left is. As evidenced by this, Joe Biden is still polling at number 1. You're not going to argue to me that Joe Biden, the number 1 polling candidate for the Democrats, is right-wing. You're not going to argue to me that because Nancy Pelosi is critical of AOC, she's right-wing. That makes literally no sense. And don't get me wrong. Joe Biden has tried to play to the progressives, but he's tepid on it. And the thing is, the left is going through a civil war. It is not a left-right issue as people keep framing it out to be. And what's really bothering me about this is that it seems like there are certain personalities that want to cede ground and give up and be politically homeless. And this is a huge, huge problem. Okay? There will be no center. If people like me, if people like the intellectual dark web say, you know what? Okay, fine. Yeah, I get it. We're not left anymore. No. The right in the past, conservatives, have had a large Christian base. In the evangelical Christians, they were essentially like a morality police for a while. We talk about how in the past 10 or so years, or 10 or 15 years ago, it was the right that wanted to ban video games and they wanted to censor language and things like that because it's a morality-based political faction. But not everyone who was conservative was religious. I knew many people who were conservatives and were absolutely atheist, but said they would rather, they told me they would rather have a religious faction, dominating the party if it meant conservative judges, conservative policy, and things like that. Okay, there are some people today who would say that they would rather have the evangelical, I'm using that word facetiously, forgive me, left, the regressive identitarians, if it means they get policy like Medicare. I will not be willing to do that because they haven't taken over the left yet. If Claire, if people give into her argument, people who are moderate centrists who oppose these fringe wackaloons, if they give up and say, okay, fine, you can have it. You know what happens? You're going to have 2 factions, the fringe wackaloons on the left and the pro-lifer conservatives on the right. Listen, not everything that conservatives believe, I don't disagree with everything that conservatives campaign for. For the most part, there's just several key issues. I think private prisons are bad, okay? One of my strongest issues is opposition to the death penalty. Strongly opposed to war. I understand there are many conservatives who hold similar positions, but mainstream conservatism is in favor of the death penalty. If turn on Fox News, they're upset about a California moratorium on the death penalty. It's a huge conundrum. Don't get me wrong. I'm also pro-choice, which I know many people on the right don't seem to understand because the reality is it's a complicated issue. Of course, I do not like abortion. Of course, I don't want people to get them. But the issue is about state control, and it's very complicated. Very, very complicated. I've gone over many videos about this. I look forward to having a more in-depth debate about the issue because it's not, someone emailed me and said, how can you oppose the death penalty but be pro-choice? And that argument is predicated upon the idea that I'm somehow okay with abortion. I'm not. But I'm just not okay with the government intervening in what may be a medical procedure. Full stop. I am not talking about abortion as contraception. I completely oppose that in every capacity. okay? I am talking about threats to the mother. I am talking about severe deformity. I'm talking about life-threatening issues for the mother and the child, and a doctor having to make a decision. And I don't want the government involved, but it's more complicated than that. I do not think the government has a right to regulate that someone has to share parts of their body with someone else. I would love to have a debate about it. The point is, I don't want to get into it. This is not going to be an abortion video. The point of this video is that if we, as moderate left-leaning individuals, a former Bernie supporter, someone who's currently supporting Democrats, give up, then we have nothing. Because the left is parading around these Netflix shows with Michelle Wolf screaming, "Everybody get an abortion!" And it's like, dude, we need to, no. And they're increasingly becoming nuts. They're increasingly becoming nuts, which means we have to try and push as hard as possible. And there are a lot of people who are on the left, who are moderate left-wing individuals, even people who support Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, who agree with me on this. So let me get into what's going on instead of ranting. Claire Lehman tweeted, "We classical liberals should own our position and stop pretending it's ideology free. While the left has moved on from classical liberalism, they haven't simply gone crazy. They hold a coherent ideology that should be taken seriously." New from Safe or True. No, there's absolutely no way that ideology held by the regressive left is in any way coherent. I can't believe Claire would tweet that out. When Claire first posted the story from this guy arguing that Dave Rubin is a conservative and that we're the new reaction, by proxy me, because he cites the Ezra Klein nonsense and Data and Society, I say, okay, I'm fine with criticism. I'm not a baby. By all means, levy criticism. But this is getting weird. Coherent? You know what my response was? They simultaneously believe that the word women with an X, Wimixin, is the inoffensive word you need to use while simultaneously telling you it's offensive to exclude women. There's no coherent ideology there. What's happening is a regressive religion, as Peter Boghossian, James Lindsay, and Helen Pluckrose would put it, the Sokol Squared researchers. They published the fake studies. Peter Boghossian says it's essentially a new religion. Intersectionality is a religion. It fits all of the tenets of a non-theistic religion. Just because the left has a growing religious faction doesn't mean we should give up. And if you do, it means we'll end up with a mirror image of what the right was in the 2000s. Morality police. People who don't legislate based on what works for everybody. People who don't legislate based on how to improve the economy, how to protect the individual. They legislate on morality, what they view subjectively as being right or wrong at any given moment, and it's incoherent. They will say Asians are overrepresented at colleges, so affirmative action is okay, but that's in opposition to their ideology, because they're talking about white institutions oppressing an entire class of people from a continent of varying ethnicities. It is not coherent. I refuse to cede this ground. Claire said, "Classical liberals who cling to the idea that they are left-wing when the left clearly don't want them remind me of jilted lovers who just can't let go. The left doesn't want them." No, you're wrong. Biden is still polling at number one. And though Biden has tried pandering to them, it hasn't worked. They hate Biden. They are coming for Biden. It was my video a couple days ago. They absolutely are trying to tear him down. They do not want him. But he's polling at number one because the average Democrat in this country is not a fringe wackaloon. I refuse to cede this ground to these nutbags. So I'm not going to read through the story, but it basically talks about, it essentially doubles down, and he says, he responds to the argument from Eric Weinstein. Here's the thing. In his original piece, my complaint, it's what Ezra Klein does. It's what this guy Uri Harris does, and Claire Lehman is backing him up, saying, well, because Dave Rubin is a heterodox individual who hangs out with conservatives, look at his tweets. He criticizes the Democrats all the time. And it's like, yeah, I don't care. That's just one person. One person, Dave Rubin. He's allowed to do what he wants. He's allowed to hang out with who he wants and believe what he believes. And if Dave Rubin says he believes in these principles, why should I not believe him? If he didn't believe in them, he would just join the conservatives and say he doesn't believe in these things. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely insane to me. What I see is a fringe faction on the left growing. And why do I talk more about Ocasio-Cortez than Donald Trump? I have published videos critical of Donald Trump, many actually. In fact, as many of you know, I often just start ragging on him randomly in these videos because it comes down to an issue of people not believing me when they're like, I've been accused of having Trump derangement syndrome and only pretending to not like Trump. And it's like, dude, I know what my issues are, and I talk about them, but I don't need to make 50 million videos. I made a video critical of Trump like last month, but there's just not, it's like every day, every single day on every network, I'm not adding to the conversation by complaining about what everyone else is complaining about. I actually made several videos praising Ocasio-Cortez early on until she shows that she's nuts. One of the first videos I did in this channel was me talking about how I supported most of her policy, and I was happy to see her win to knock out the corporatist crony Democrat types who have been in who have been in office for like 10 years. But then she starts pushing this fringe, insane nonsense, and so I criticize her for it. Doesn't make me right-wing. It just shows the left is in a state of civil war. And if we give up, if the moderates give up, then it leaves people like me with absolutely nothing to vote for. There'll be no politicians, and anything I believe is right will be gone, separated by two extremes. Not only that, what they're proposing by having the intellectual dark web types and by proxy people like me, because I don't want to associate myself with them, but clearly there's some similarities. That means conservatives will be completely wiped out if the Overton window shifts. You are going to have, if this ground is seated, two factions: regular people who believe in freedom and liberty between left and right economic, and then in opposition to that, a fringe religion, a religion. That means the side for freedom is going to be dramatically weakened. Now, it's possible. It's possible that it will be strengthened. Right now, what they're arguing is dangerous because we actually have liberals and conservatives agreeing to oppose the religion of the regressive left. And it's a non-theistic religion. It follows the tenets. They have priests, they have sin, they have original sin, they call it privilege, all that nonsense. Look up Peter Boghossian's, we did an interview on Subverse with him, but you can look it up. He gets it more in depth, and it's brilliant if you ask me. Right now, we have a large group of people. Basically, everybody who voted for Trump opposes these people. And then you have people like me on the left who oppose these people. Let's not allow them to win. But of course, they want to. So I responded. You're seating the Overton window. Biden is still polling at number one. These people need to be ridiculed for their insane ideology, not acknowledged. It's not even coherent. They think Wimixon is simultaneously offensive and inoffensive. I couldn't frame it in a tweet, but no, it's not just that it's offensive and inoffensive. It's that it's offensive not to use it, and it's offensive to use it. How do you know what you're supposed to do? You can't. It's religion. You're supposed to bend the knee to the priests of their ideology and just give in. I said not only that, but I'm seriously tired of people going, this is the new reactionary right, simply because they don't like Dave Rubin. To act like Brett and Eric aren't on the left is absurd. We're talking about a reactionary and regressive religion, not a policy debate. Progressives are only 8% of the U.S. Stop normalizing extremists. The identitarian ideology isn't even unique to the left. It's like saying all Christians are the right. No, many Christians are Democrats and on the left, and are evangelicals on the right. Well, Claire responded to the identitarian thing, and I think it's decently fair. She said it's not identitarianism. It's the view that reality is shaped through discourse language, that gender roles are primarily socially constructed, that language needs to be constrained to keep people safe. These are not fringe views, they're mainstream. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, wrong. I'm playing Division 2 with my buddies. Hey, what do you guys think about the gender thing? What gender thing? The gender debate. I don't know what you're talking about. How many genders are there? What? How many two? Oh. Liberals! Hippie, pot-smoking, skateboarder liberals. I was talking to an accountant. I said, how many genders do you think there are? And he was like, what? I was like, how many genders do you think there are? And he was like, I don't understand the question. I'm like, gender, what is it? And he's like, men and women. And I'm like, right, how many are there? And he goes, 2. And I was like, do you believe biological sex is a real thing? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, it's a confusing question, right? Because these are facts to regular people. These are liberals. These are liberals working in the Philadelphia area. This is not a red, it's a weird, Philly's a weird place. I went to my friend further south, and we were talking about it. Bernie Sanders voters. And I asked the same questions. They have no idea what any of this is. Twitter is amplifying extremists. I refuse to give the extremists ground. Don't get me wrong, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. They absolutely have sway in mainstream institutions. It is being institutionalized. And I will resist it till the end. Because these people don't believe in actually solving problems. They're morality police, and they want to get professors fired for trying to teach people things. That's what's happening. I said, no, definitely not. I hang out with passive liberals, and I asked them about gender, and they got confused because they know literally nothing about this. They said there are 2 genders, etc. What else do we have? Yeah, so that's my post. She said, people complain about being politically homeless like it's a bad thing. But what's so bad about not having chewed up prepackaged beliefs and thinking for yourself? That's not the issue. That's not the issue. Bridget Fatassi says, I prefer political refugee. I escaped. I actually don't mind that. I've referred to myself as politically homeless. But it's important to point out once again that Joe Biden is still polling at number 1. And there's a reason for it. Biden is trying to pander to the woke. It's not working. They hate him. They hate him. Okay? He's got a racist history. Like, I don't think it matters, but, back in the day, he did things that were considered offensive and racist. Sure. He's got the Me Too thing. But regular Americans don't know about this, so they're like, oh, Biden. Oh, hey, so, Obama. Yeah, okay. And they vote for him. So Biden is trying to build that coalition. So he panders a little bit to the fringe leftists while still being that Democratic centrist corporate type. And that's what he's trying to do, but it doesn't work. Okay, so long story short, I'm going to wrap this up here because I'm rather frustrated that Quillette keeps pushing this narrative and it's just dangerous and wrong. I can respect them for doing it, but I will point out it's a bit disheartening because Quillette is part of a group of individuals who challenge and refuse to cede and want to have open and free inquiry. Ceding this ground, surrendering, in a sense, to the people who refuse to have the conversation, who want to take things by force, whose strategy is to destroy your life with lies and smears to prevent you from talking about things. I will not cede anything to them. They'll have to take it from my cold, dead hands. So I don't like seeing Quillette repeatedly push this narrative and say, just give up. Just give up, moderates. It's over. And another thing that really frustrates me is I am not a classical liberal. I am not, okay? Okay, I am a social liberal. That puts me 10, 15 years ago on the Democratic policy side. Someone who I voted for Obama 1 time. Today, I am still a social liberal. And that's why I was a fan of Bernie. And it's why I'm a fan of Andrew Yang. And Tulsi Gabbard's mostly about war. But she's one of the... Listen, and a lot of people don't like Tulsi Gabbard for her domestic policy, but she's one of the only, if not the only, Democratic candidate who has denounced identity politics. Okay? You have to understand, there's a reason why I like her. She's not perfect. I don't agree with everything she does. I don't agree with any politician for the most part. But she's come out against war wholeheartedly. She called out the U.S. involvement with funding terrorists overseas, and she's opposed identity politics, and that is respectable. She stood on her principles, stepped down from the DNC when they screwed over Bernie Sanders. She refused to support Hillary. Respectable. Andrew Yang, I think, is a smart guy. So here's the thing. This is what's happening. Do you know why there are so many Democrats running? Because the left is in civil war. And this essentially, I understand Claire, I believe she's Australian, so it's maybe she doesn't, I don't want to put an American political fight on her shoulders. But for those of us in the U.S., we have to resist the growing religion. We may lose, for sure. And then we'll have no one to represent our values. And that's not going to be fun for anybody. To have, if you're someone who's historically been on the left, what people keep saying, the conservatives, to people like me and my friends, just vote conservative. You know how crazy they are. Just give up, vote conservative. And I'm like, oh my God, man. I'm not going to do it. But I will say this. Dave Rubin definitely has. He said he'd be more. Dave Rubin said he would rather vote for Trump than one of these ridiculous regressive leftists. And I understand why. I'd rather just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to be involved. But look, I'll end with one more thought. Quillette is within their right, and I still am willing to respect them because that is the inherent weakness of liberalism, of classic liberalism. The willingness to criticize yourself and to host ideas that challenge your own worldview, and that's respectable. And I understand that they should do it and they have to do it. But it is disheartening to see that the left will just always eat itself. From the moderate classical liberal to the fringe regressive left, it's all about just giving up and eating yourself. Look what he does. In this article, he just expands his Dave Rubin criticism to Jordan Peterson, but for the love of God, talk about someone else. I'm just sick of it. I won't give up any ground. I'm going to be who I am. I'm not going to change my principles for anybody, and I'm not going to support any politician that I don't like. End of story. I got one more video. I've got more videos coming up. The next video will be at 1 p.m. I will see you then.